It has now been over a month since the Nintendo Switch 2 officially launched, and we were able to play it all together, finally. A new generation of Nintendo consoles, and yet I'm a little underwhelmed now, and at first I was really excited about this thing, and I could not stop talking about it. I had so much to say. I declared it the greatest console of all time because the Nintendo Switch in my mind was the greatest console, so then this one has to be the next greatest, right? And of course, I'm not going to backtrack that statement now, but obviously things feel a little bit different for a lot of people, and that's what I want to dive into today. Why does it feel so different? Why do people seem to be complaining so much? And what has happened within this last month? Well, I asked you guys, my community, and I have over 300 people here who voted, and make sure you go to my community tabs and check for my polls because you could be contributing to a video here. But I asked you guys, it's been 1 month, how do you feel about the Switch 2? 29% of you said, I love it, it is everything I have hoped for. 41% said it is pretty good, not a ton to play yet, but I like it. 22% said it is fine, I am pretty underwhelmed and don't use it much, and 8% said, I hate it. It has been a genuinely awful experience for me, and I wish more of those 8% left comments as to why, and please make sure you leave a comment under this video as to why if you hate it, but this is a pretty revealing statistic for me, because that essentially means that 70% of you either love it or think it is pretty good. Well, for me personally, I think a lot of it has come down to Mario Kart World. That was the big tentpole title for Nintendo. That was the launch game. That was the Nintendo Switch 2 game. Now, sure, there were other launch games that now we look back on and say maybe they weren't as fruitful as some people might have initially expected. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both had Switch 2 editions upon launch. Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 along with 1 and 2 in a big package came out, and now people are playing that game. Cyberpunk 2077 was the biggest third-party game that came out of the Nintendo Switch 2's launch, and of course most people bought that game if they wanted to experience the Switch 2. And I think all of those games combined really provided a decent experience on launch. Mario Kart World just had to be the title that pushed things forward, like Breath of the Wild did for the Nintendo Switch. And Breath of the Wild lasted a very long time. People were talking about that game for over a year after that, and people continued to talk about Breath of the Wild and the DLC it got kept things going. And with single-player games, it is really hard to mess things up after launch if the game is already amazing at launch, and it was amazing at launch, and people really didn't have a lot to critique about it. The sense of that game at the time was that things were overwhelmingly positive. Sure, there were people that thought it was a ruination of the series, it wasn't Zelda, people got really upset about that game at first, but most of the time, I think the vast majority of people were very pleased with Breath of the Wild as their launch game, and it will be a nostalgic game for people for years to come. Now with Mario Kart World, things are very different because it is not a single-player game, it is a multiplayer game, and that is a huge difference because with single-player experiences, most of the time that is showing off the graphical capabilities of your new console, and it is also getting you involved and getting you invested, because with a single-player game, you are going to find yourself reaching emotional depth that you would never do in a multiplayer game. Breath of the Wild is very nostalgic to a lot of people. People care about that game a lot. People remember so much about that game to this very day, and I guarantee you a lot of people who aren't huge Mario Kart fans, who aren't huge multiplayer fans, are not going to remember Mario Kart World in the same light, especially now with this new online update that I have talked about ad nauseum on my channel. Go watch those videos if you want to know exactly what happened with that, but Mario Kart World really has a bad rep right now because Nintendo ruined it for a lot of people. And a lot of people also say that it wasn't ruined, that it is totally fine, that things are normal. And yet, Nintendo made that update, and it was very unfortunate. But this is not the Mario Kart video, this is the Switch 2 month later video, and I cannot help but say, Mario Kart World really was the big hitter here, and now, on July 8th, as the time of this recording, I am very torn. At first, I felt Mario Kart World was the next big step, next evolution for this series, and honestly, the Nintendo Switch 2 was able to show off a lot about itself with it. But also, as time passed on, we found out more and more what was wrong with this console and what we have to do moving forward to make it better, or at least what Nintendo will have to do to make it better moving forward. Because there are big glaring issues now, and one of the biggest ones is the battery life. People cannot get a lot of time out of this console in handheld mode, and that has not been a big issue for me personally because I play a lot undocked mode, but the times I have done handheld have been very unfortunate for me because I will play it in about an hour session, and before I know it, I'm almost down to 60%. With my Switch OLED, I would get at least 4 to 6 hours out of most of my games, and that was with some of the biggest Nintendo games on the platform. Now, with the Switch 2, playing Mario Kart World for an hour gets me down to 60%, 2 hours will get me down to about 20%, and then before I know it, it's dead. If you are going on a plane ride and you bring your Switch 2 with you and you're playing a very graphically intense game like Cyberpunk 2077, you are going to get about 2.5 hours to 3 hours out of that, and that's it. If your flight is any longer than 3 hours, which most flights can be longer than 3 hours for a lot of people, you're not going to even be able to play this thing unless you have a battery pack with you. It got to the point with my Nintendo Switch 1 where I was just taking it places without even bringing my AC charger. I would genuinely just play it a little bit on the car ride wherever I was going, or if someone else was driving, and then I would play it a little bit while I was there, and then a little bit on the way home, and I would barely be at 30% because I did play it a lot. I put a lot of hours into it, but I knew I wasn't going to put that many hours into it, and so I just didn't even have to worry about the battery. I could never do that with my Switch 2. I am always worried, if I am in handheld mode, how much longer do I actually have? Am I really going to be playing this thing till it's dying? I really need to make sure I keep tabs on the battery percentage, and that is such an unfortunate turn of events for the Nintendo Switch 2 to have. I was really excited about this console at launch, and I do think it has a lot of potential, and of course as the games come and Nintendo makes more and more decisions for or against what we want, we're going to end up looking back and saying, yeah, this console was great for such and such, or maybe Nintendo made a lot of bad moves here for such and such reasons. But I still think this generation has the potential to be one of the best. With the Nintendo Switch, sure, we only had Breath of the Wild to really go off of, then we knew all of the other announcements set up for the rest of the year, and we're kind of in that spot now where people are waiting for a Direct and we're not completely content with the lineup for the rest of the year. But if you really think about it, the rest of the year is full. The Nintendo Switch 2 has enough games to sustain itself for this year. I just think people are going to be disappointed if all they end up with is a brand new Mario Kart and really a brand new Donkey Kong game in terms of like their huge new games. So with the Switch 2, I think a lot of it is going to rely on the announcements coming and how quickly they do come, because with the Nintendo Switch, we knew things were legendary right from the start because of how many amazing games there were. But that is just an unreasonable expectation for us to hold for this console. Unfortunately, I think people are really overhyping themselves. And that is just another thing that I think Nintendo fans struggle with in general, is the weight of those expectations and how they manage them, especially with a brand new console, and especially on the heels of such an amazing console like the Nintendo Switch. Even those games at the end of that year's lifespan, the games that weren't all that great and games that were smaller in scope and scale, people were still praising them for it because they didn't have nothing on the table. They had a lot of little projects on the table and made people think, oh, we're going to have a lot of bigger projects ready for the Switch 2 and we're going to get spoiled by them. And I kind of had that expectation myself to think, you know what? Nintendo's got a lot on the table for us. We're going to have a lot to look forward to. But as I see this year fill out, I'm seeing that's not the case. They are doing exactly what I said they should do, and that is spreading out their big releases. Mario Kart World at launch. A month later, a brand new 3D platformer similar to Mario Odyssey's scope and scale, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Something that is hyping people up to the levels of Mario Odyssey. I mean, I have seen so many people say they cannot wait to get their hands on this game, and people saying that they wish it had been the launch title. So many people have wished that Donkey Kong Bonanza was the game we were all playing at the start of the Switch 2's life cycle. And I agree to a certain extent, but I'm also glad that it's coming a little bit later, because if Mario Kart World had come later and had all this disappointment carrying into the later months of this console's lifespan, things would have been a lot worse. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a goodwill game. It is the type of game that is going to get us through to the next big release, and of course there are going to be a bunch of new games coming out this year as well as Switch 2 editions as well as other ports. And like I said, I will make another video about this eventually, but this year, we already kind of have a lot. Like, we don't necessarily need a Nintendo Direct. We don't. We just don't until September. Because if you look at it, we've got Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition, TV Edition, whatever you want to call that game. Its name is ridiculous. We've got Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out in July as well. Then in August, we've got Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and then we've got Drag X Drive. Then we know Kirby Air Riders is coming soon. We know Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is going to be coming at least within the span of the winter, which means probably January or February, maybe even December if they decide they finish it up fast enough and they just want to get it out on shelves. Then we've got Splatoon Stinkin' Raiders, a spin-off Splatoon game that looks like it's going to be a huge single-player experience, something we have never seen in the series before and is pushing the boundaries of what we even know Splatoon can be. And we don't even know if that's coming out this year or not, but we certainly know it is coming soonish, right? It has to be coming within the next year at least. We've got Metroid Prime Stinkin' 4 Beyond. This game is amazing. It just looks really, really good and is going to be a unique experience to play on the Switch 2 specifically because of the enhanced graphics and the mouse controls, something that the Switch 1 could never have done, something that the Switch 2 will make full utilization of. And I am just excited to see all of these games come out and play them all, and I know they're all niche. Not a lot of them are big titles. Drag X Drive is a brand new IP. It is a brand new tech demo, if you will, with a lot of gameplay similar to how ARMS was to show off the Switch's hardware capabilities. Then we've got Jamboree and then Kirby Forgotten Land. Both those are old games. Kirby Air Riders is another very, very niche game that I think Sakurai's name will help push a little bit, but still, it's not going to be selling Switch 2s, right? People are not going to go out there and buy it simply for this game, at least not in mass. And then Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Sure, we have Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition. People have been playing Zelda games ever since the Switch came out. Zelda has a new life on Nintendo's brand and just is bigger than ever. But it is a spin-off game of a very niche subset of genre that people aren't all that attracted to these days. So we've really got Mario Kart World, which people are furious at. Then we've got Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I think is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be the one big shining star of this year. Then we have nothing in terms of big IPs, in terms of big games coming soon. What will they do? Probably give us a lot of information in a September Direct for the upcoming year, including what a lot of people have been saying. But yes, Animal Crossing will probably be that big 2026 title, and they will probably have at least a second or third big title for that year as well. They just want to make sure that they spread everything else out. And I know a month in, with all of these hardware issues, all of these software issues, Mario Kart World making people mad, all the third-party games and the key cards and the price drama, I think people will calm down once they see all of these big games coming out at a higher rate. And the hardware is an issue. The battery life, as I talked about earlier, is an issue. And another issue is the screen of this Switch 2. This console is $450, and the screen seems to be, to a lot of people, at least a little bit of a step backwards from the Nintendo Switch OLED edition. It is fine, in my opinion. I don't think the OLED is significantly better. I do think it is a little better. And a big issue that I think really makes the OLED screen a lot better is the ghosting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know all of the intricate details of this, why the technology does this, why this screen suffers with ghosting specifically, but if you look at it, a lot of people see problems with it and have been dealing with it, and it's hard to play. It makes games almost impossible to play in handheld mode, and that is very, very unfortunate, and I just don't see it personally on my Switch 2. I don't play in handheld a lot, and I personally don't notice it a lot, but for some people, it is just indefensible. For 2D games specifically, if you're playing something like Mario Maker 2, all of those input delays are going to be a big deal. The ghosting is going to mess up your platforming, and it's going to be very difficult to deal with. And that is something that Nintendo needs to address with a Switch 2 update. Some sort of thing that they can push in the future, some sort of mid-console generation spruce up like the OLED version. I don't know what they're going to do, but I know they can do better. Because with the Switch 1, the battery was a little bit of a concern then, not as much as it is now, but a little bit of a concern. And then midway through, they released a brand new Switch 1 model that had a much, much better battery life. Then we got the OLED version and then Switch Lites, and then we waited a very long time until right now. Now, here's the other thing, right? There are a lot of hardware issues, there are a lot of things that people are complaining about, but this console is also amazing in its own way. I mean, I am playing these huge games on the go with me, much better than any Steam Deck could ever hope to do. And of course, as generations go on and the PlayStation 6 comes out and these games get more and more graphically intense, even though I don't think there is much of a ceiling to reach for there, I think they've probably reached a lot of their fullest potential, but these games will continue to get better and the Switch 2 will suffer in terms of how they run those third-party games even more so. But now, for right now, Cyberpunk 2077 runs flawlessly on the Switch 2. All of these Street Fighter games, Bravely Default, I know that's not a graphically intense game, but third-party games, indie games, all of these games run really, really well. And I can take it anywhere I want, on the go with me, on the toilet, anywhere, on a car trip, anywhere I could possibly imagine, and then I can just put it on my TV and play it as if I was playing a home console game, and it looks amazing. Another bad side to this was that they really hyped up the 120 frames per second mantra with the Switch 2, and I do believe that it is capable of it. We have seen it with things like the Switch 2 Welcome Tour, but outside of that, there have been 0 games that run anything at 120 FPS, And that is unfortunate because Mario Kart World does not do that. I didn't expect it to, I knew it wouldn't, but it doesn't use it to that full capability. All they really did was make sure that 120 frames was possible for some select games, but then they haven't quite implemented that feature yet to anything else. Mostly what this console has done is lock everything at a solid 60 FPS, which is smooth as butter. I love 60 FPS, and it is amazing to see all these older games and all these new games stay at 60. But they hyped us up. They said 120 was going to be possible, and they have yet to show us strong examples as to why that is the case. It's very unfortunate. Because do you really think Hyrule Warriors is going to come out and be 120 FPS? Do you think Kirby Air Riders is going to be 120 FPS? I mean, sure, that would be the one game I think would actually be 120. Sakurai is a wizard. He knows exactly how to push the most out of this hardware, how to make his games best, and I can see that being a very compact experience in which every single thing you look at is very regulated, and they're able to make it to where 120 FPS is possible. I look forward to Luigi's Mansion 4 for a very similar reason. Those mansions are smaller in scope and scale. Every door you open is essentially a new loading zone, so that means they can get the most out of the hardware and make it look better than ever. But most games aren't going to do that. Donkey Kong Bonanza, I will be very, very surprised with its destructive tendencies and the big open world that you are running through similar to the sandbox style of Odyssey. I would be shocked if that game was even at a solid 60 FPS. So it does feel like, in a sense, they did lie to us a little bit there, but at the same time, the console runs great. Everything is still really, really nice. I love the new kickstand. I love the Joy-Con too. Taking them off and on is so extremely satisfying. I have seen so many videos of people just slipping them on and off and saying, this is my favorite game on the Switch 2, is just messing with these Joy-Con. The kickstand and the top USB-C port is a game changer if you want to play in handheld mode, which a lot of people really do, and you want to also then play it in tabletop mode, because a lot of people also do that, especially for something like an airplane flight, and you need to charge this thing because you really, really need to charge this thing, all of its battery life stuff, and you are able to do that now. You're able to put it in the top port and it works perfectly. It works amazing. I love every single thing about it. The UI is something that a lot of people were really frustrated with, and something that I think makes this not necessarily feel like a next generation leap, but it is something that I also don't really care too much about personally. Themes have never been something I am super interested in. I wish it was there for the people who were, but to be honest, it's just not that big of a deal. Every time I open my home screen, every time I switch on my Switch 2, I am trying to play games. I'm not necessarily scrolling on the home menu looking at it. I just want to get there as quickly and efficiently as possible, and the Switch UI does that very, very well, and it is updated to where the grays and darks are just much darker now. I like it a lot better than the Switch 1. The buttons are all better. The UI sound effects are much cuter. Even when you turn on the dang console, it plays a little da-da-da-da. Like, it's really fun. It's so charming. It's that Wii U charm that people have been missing, and I really appreciate Nintendo going out on a limb there and doing that for those fans. But people really don't talk about that much, do they? They only really talk about all of the negative stuff. And here's another really, really positive thing. It goes with the Joy-Con too. When you take off the old Joy-Con with the Switch 1, and then you would try to connect them to your handheld mode or even just the TV mode, the Joy-Con would take forever to connect sometimes. Sometimes people had an issue where it just never would. And you would keep clicking and clicking and watching the green light go back and forth, and it just wouldn't connect. With the Nintendo Switch 2, I don't know what they did differently, how they updated it, because they didn't advertise this at all. But the very freaking second you snap those things off, it takes about a second and a half for them to connect, and boom, you are ready to go. You're ready to move and play. It's amazing. It is such a time saver, a quality of life feature that I wish they had talked about a little bit more in their favor. I really do think that the dock is interesting because it doesn't feel as good as the Switch 1 dock did to me personally. I know a lot of people have struggled with putting their Switches into the Nintendo Switch dock, but for whatever reason, it worked really, really well for me. The rounded edges of the Switch 2 is what messes it all up, because with the Switch 1, the dock was a square format, and the square actually lined up perfectly with the Switch screen, so I knew exactly where to slide it into, and I got it down perfectly every single time. But now, the edges are a lot more rounded, the dock itself feels a little bit more flimsy, and I'm kind of putting this big machine into the dock, and then it just feels weird. I don't know, I don't want to complain about something so detailed like that, but it does feel a little bit like a step down in my opinion, but the fan in that dock is something I really am interested in. Because I look at that thing and it doesn't do much. Like, I never hear it. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just where I have my dock, where my Switch 2 is. But I'm not far away from it. And I never, ever hear the fan running. And the reason I find this to be somewhat of a problem is because I don't know if it does run, or if there's a certain feature I need to turn on, or if there's something I'm missing. But every time I take my Switch 2 out of the dock right after I've played with it for a long time on my TV, or even not for a long time, like just 30 to 40 minutes of Mario Kart, I take it in handheld mode and that thing is steaming hot. You could cook eggs on the back of it. I mean, it's not burning your hands or anything, but it's uncomfortable enough to where I don't really want to use it then. And I thought the fan was going to help that a lot more, but the more I think about it, I just don't know why they did that. Why would they put a fan in the dock? How would that work? Is it just cooling off the dock itself, or is it cooling off the Switch 2? I kind of think it's cooling off the dock because they don't want it to melt, and that is a concern that is so interesting to me. They saw it and probably had different tests to where it was, after a long time, maybe melting the dock, and so they decided the fan was going to be included just for the dock. I don't know. Maybe it helped clear out all of it, but I feel like it doesn't ever turn on. I never hear it. I never see it working, and maybe that's just a me thing, but it feels like it's not doing what it should be doing. The screen is also a little bit finicky when I'm putting it in the dock, taking it out of the dock. It is almost impossible for me to avoid making some sort of fingerprint on the screen unless I grab the Joy-Cons from the side and take it out, and I feel like that's a very uncomfortable way for me to do it, and it is also in a very weird crevice inside of my gaming station, so I don't really like taking it out that way. I wish I could just take it out the old way, but I feel like if I don't, the screen is going to stay messed up the rest of the console's lifespan, and I really don't want that. And I also am worried about the scratches that might potentially get on the screen from the dock. That was a big issue from the Nintendo Switch 1 days, but I feel like they did a good job with the screen not making it that way, so things have been pretty good on that front. There are a lot of games coming down the pipeline. The hardware itself is a little underwhelming while also being pretty good. Exactly what they expected to give us and exactly what we expected to receive in a lot of ways. Sure, there were some things that they oversold. Sure, there are some things that I still think they could have done a lot better job of communicating to us and how exactly that would work. How would this actually do this? But they did a good job overall. The games themselves are decent as well. I love Mario Kart World down to its core. I just don't like the update that they did to the online and the way they designed it from the ground up. I really, really love Donkey Kong Bonanza. I'm excited to get my hands on that. All the games coming down the pipeline are going to be amazing. I'm sure they've got even more surprises up their sleeve. And if they don't, that's a conversation for another day. But at least a month later, the Nintendo Switch 2 is still holding up to most people's expectations, I think. The Switch 2 may not be the greatest console of all time yet, but I still think it has the potential to be that. I think for me personally, with the entire Switch 1 library and every single thing that console already offered, to now be on the Switch 2, except runs better. Everything is just better. Now we have all of these new games that are going to be coming soon. I think it is very, very likely this console ends up being the greatest of all time for those who claim the Switch 1 was already that, because this is just a better Switch in a lot of ways, in most ways that actually matter. But I think with the Switch 2, all of the progress that it has made is why all of those things are kind of detrimental. The battery life is only as bad as it is because the games run so stinking well. A lot of the overheating also has to do with the processing power that allows you to play games the way that you do. Something that is very indefensible is the screen ghosting. I just don't know what's going on there. I don't know if there's a fix for that. I don't know anything about that, to be honest, but it is pretty indefensible. The pricing is another thing I can see people getting pretty upset about, but I just can't agree. I can't agree. The price itself is not a bad price. $450 for this console, only $150 more than the base model Switch for a much, much more powerful system. Come on, guys. How can you say it's not worth it? How can you say that? $70 games is the bare minimum for market standards right now, and $80 is also indefensible. I am not a fan of Mario Kart being $80, but a lot of people bought it, didn't they? And a lot of people did get those bundles too, and it was worth it to a lot of those people. And of course, I got the bundle too, so it was really only $50 for me, $500 for a brand new next generation Mario Kart, and $450 for essentially a console in which I will be playing for 8 years most likely. Yeah. That is worth it. And the accessories are a lot more expensive. Amiibo specifically. Oh my gosh. Almost $30 for some of these things. It's getting ridiculous, but I love Amiibo, so I bought a lot of them. I got the Tears of the Kingdom ones. I got a bunch of the Splatoon ones. There are new ones that are going to be more expensive coming in the future, like the Donkey Kong Amiibo. I got that as well. I'm a little sucker. Say whatever you want, right? But I paid for it because I found it to be worth it, because I like the product. And if you're going to complain about the price, I hope you don't buy it. That's the only thing you can do. Talking to other people about how you feel about the price does nothing. Nothing at all, except for spreading hate, because if you know you're not going to buy it, let other people enjoy it. If you know other people are defending it, then engage in respectful debate. Give your reasons and then let it be. It's seriously not that big of a deal. So let me know down in the comment section what you think about the Switch 2. Where are you at on all of this stuff? Have you been enjoying it? What has been an issue for you that maybe I didn't talk about, or something I did talk about? Let me know down in the comments, all that and more. Make sure you like and subscribe today's video if you enjoyed the content. It really does help support the channel. Click the notification bell so you know exactly when my videos drop, and consider joining my membership program, just a few bucks a month to help my channel and get early access to videos and a bunch of other really cool perks. Click on the left side of the screen if you want to see my initial impressions of the Nintendo Switch 2, and click on the right side of your screen if you want to see my playlist with all of my Mario Kart videos. Thank you once more for making it to the end. You are amazing. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.